The real goal of making a great name is find the story that you want to tell through a brand. A brand name that evokes that feeling, evokes that story without being overly descriptive about it. It's tricky. It's like a poem. Hi guys! Today we're gonna talk about brand naming. By the end of the video, you'll learn what makes a great brand name. If you're new here, my name is Q and I'm a graduate of NYU MBA program and a brand manager of Fortune 200 company. There was a startup company that created this device that people can send emails to each other. So they research people who are going to work and ask them, what does sending email through your phone and receiving email through your phone feels like? How would you feel about that device? And people often said stress, my blood pressure going up. So these were not really joyous feelings. So while the name makers at Lexicon were brainstorming, there was a word strawberry. But then strawberry was too slow to read. And eventually, blackberry was one of the contenders. Blackberry fruits can lower your blood pressure. And also, the droplet of the BlackBerry actually look kind of like the keyboard of the BlackBerry device. And black sound very tech and slick, so they eventually went with name BlackBerry. Product naming and brand naming. It sounds very, very important, right? It seems like the focal point of marketing and advertisement. A compelling product name can really increase the consumer engagement and increase the sale. So that sounds really important. However, product naming is just one part of marketing. It is all compounded with right advertisement and marketing strategies. So we should look at the whole picture, not just the product naming. However, it has a potential to really stand out. It is part of marketing strategy that marketers should be aware of. Did you know that brand naming actually existed for centuries? In 1200, Italians put on watermarks on papers. During the Industrial Revolution, people used their family's last name to use as a brand name because of the reputation they built on their family businesses. However, the modern brand naming, the ones that really utilize psychological linguistic analysis, it really started after World War II. Because after World War II, there were explosion of similar product and services, so you really had to try to differentiate yourself among your competitors using more creative and imaginative name, not just your last name. So professional naming services became more necessary after consumer were faced with increased number of choices when it comes to brands and products. There are also trends in brand naming. You might have noticed it. In the 1920s, brands that end with the word EX sound was very popular, such as Windex and Xerox. Maybe Clorox too. So, what are some universal rules of making a good brand name? Number 1, it's probably better to keep them short. Number 2, names that display consonant, vowel, and consonant, like Gatorade or Amazon. They're often easiest to say because these letter combinations are often what we learn as an infant. In any language, these are the first type of words that infants learn. Now that this naming field is more developing, researchers found many different sounds evoking different emotion and feelings.
For example, names that include soft consonant may suggest luxury.
Lexicon, the first modern naming company, conducted a study. And from that study, they were trying to figure out people's emotion. What kind of sound evokes certain emotion? They asked hundreds of people in America, Asia, and Europe. And they asked questions like this. Which sounds more happy or which sounds more sad? Which sounds more alive? Which sounds more lifeless? Which sounds more daring and which sounds more insecure? And from that study, Lexicon found out that consonants such as C, V, P, they conveyed liveliness, vigor, and well-being. If a brand is going to be global, it is essential to screen that name for any embarrassing association in some countries. Much of the daily job of linguists who work for naming companies, they need to scan the worldwide database to make sure that they're not choosing a name that's already being used and being trademarked, because violation can be very, very costly. There are plenty of examples of big companies who choose names that already exist or sound way too similar and has been fined by the government or have very significant backlash from consumers. Ideal names should also sound very unique and outstanding on many different mediums. It can look good on paper, but it has to also look good on social media, search engines, and many different languages, especially if it's a global brand. Of course, the pleasantness of sound and repetition of identical or similar sound also matters. It's called alliteration and assonance. Simplicity and pleasant sound pattern also affects brand recall. If you find a name to be really fun to say or pleasant to say, it will stick to people's mind more and they would want to use it more, which will help them memorize that brand name more. However, it is very dangerous to be too tactical about this kind of rules. The real goal of making a great name is find the story that you want to tell through a brand. It could be that it's powerful, it's easier, or it's faster. And then find a brand name that evokes that feeling, evokes that story without being overly descriptive about it. It's tricky. It's like a poem. Without being so descriptive or predictable or even logical. Often descriptive and straightforward name doesn't touch consumers' heart. We want a name that really evokes certain stories subconsciously, which will help consumer to choose the brand, to connect with the brand, and buy the product. Great brand name could really great names often replace the category name, such as Kleenex, or Xerox, or Amazon, or Google. As I mentioned in the beginning, brand naming is part of brand strategy. It's not the focal point nor everything. There are many people who are against putting too much emphasis on naming. One of them is Professor Byrne at Columbia Business School. He mentioned that brand name is only a part of multi-million-dollar marketing campaigns that involves many different things. Advertising, research, and social media, etc. And he said what's more important is your brand strategy, your distribution channel, where do you want to meet your customer. So basically like 4P, 3C type of thing. And he says, would Amazon be less successful if it was called Nile? Maybe not. It might be as successful through the multi-million-dollar campaigns. If we can keep reinforce that name to people, it is possible to make them remember your brand name with good enough names. It doesn't have to be perfect. It is famous that Google was actually misspelled goggle when Larry Page and Sergey Brin were searching for a name, and they realized there were a lot less results about Google than goggle, which was already being used a lot. Also, Coca-Cola, those two big C, an accountant thought big 2C looked great, and that's why they went with it. So not everyone is convinced that naming is all that important. However, in 1989, there were less than 10,000 registered high-tech trademark in US. In 2011, 300,000. So 2025, I can only imagine how high that number is. So I think there is something to be able to scan the right name and looking at your competitor's name and coming up with poetic, unique name that people are drawn to and will give you an edge. I hope you enjoyed this video. I enjoy making these videos. This is my hobby. Let me know if you have any questions about this content. This was based on New York Times article that I read during my study, so I will put that information below as well. Have a great month, and I'll see you next month. Bye!